What are you looking at? Get your hand out of my pocket. It's time for the pre-market post game with yours truly, Dex the Algo Capitalist, aka the Vulcan, coming to you live at PulseWaveTrading.com, home of the world famous PulseWave price trigger reports that we put right in your hand each and every trading day, Sunday through Friday. What it look like? What's good? What's popping? What's crack-a-lacking? The answer is these markets. Overnight market's a little bit quiet right now. Not a lot going on. It's just kind of like, blah. Market's taking a breather. It did move a lot yesterday. So right now you'll see the Dow it's only down 20 points at 24,493. NASDAQ 100's up 7.5 at 93.33 and 3/4. Mini S&P 500 down 6 at 29.42. Russell down 8.3 points at 1324.90. Bitcoin futures pretty much the same price it was doing last night's end of day report. We're at 96.80, off 65 bucks. That's it. Taking a look at nat gas, up a nickel at 183. Crude oil up 60 cents per barrel at $32.25 a barrel. And I should note that you can now trade crude oil futures again. But you got to go into the August contract. So it's on and popping now from the August contract forward. So that's a really, 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 really good sign and good news. Great news. Still can't trade that June and July. June is gone now, but it's all about July. You can't trade July. Can't trade that front month, but you can definitely trade August. So who cares? August is actually pretty decent. You can do some damage in there. So just FYI for you crude oil people, savages out there. All right. Long bond is down 3/30 seconds at 178 and 2/30 seconds. Gold kind of quiet. It's up $4.80 now at $1,739.10. Silver also a little quiet right now. It's up 21 cents at $17.68. Looking at the US dollar index, still trading below par at 99.50. It's down 15 pips. The euro dollar is up 23 pips at 109.43. Pound sterling up 39 pips at 122.32. The Aussie dollar is up 24 pips at 65.40. And the Canadian dollar is down 30 pips at 139.11. Euro yen is up 99 pips at 118.17. And the dollar yen is up 68 pips at 107.97. Kiwi is up 45 pips at 60.86. Looking over the food now, you got your beans. Beans are up 2.5 at 847.5. Go soybeans. Looking at corn up 3.5 points at 324.25. And wheat back above 5. It's trading at 501, up 4 points. All right, so as you can see, overnight markets, not too much fireworks. So if you got triggered in anything, you're probably just going to be holding it, riding it, and letting the market work itself out, making the market do what it do. And that's it. That's all you can do. Not too much there to deal with. Sometimes trading is like hunting. You got to sit and wait before you can snipe your game. Then once you got the game in the scopes, that's when it's on and popping. But until then, most of the time, it ain't much happening. You just got to chill and wait. And then when you get it in your sights, you pop it off. You let it off, you know? So we'll see what happens. We just don't know what's going to happen just yet. All right, with that being said, let's take a look at our overnight news, things that are important that we need to be aware of. Let's see if there's anything that we should be aware of. Give me a second. I'm pulling it up now. So far, it doesn't quite look like there's anything going on. But, you know, that can be a little deceiving sometimes. All right, we got it. We're ready to roll, ready to go, lock and load. All right, let's pop one off real quick. All right, so first and foremost, The day is straightening up to look like this. Asian stocks rise after Moderna's coronavirus vaccine delivers early positive results. U.S. futures slid after Trump sent the WHO a 30-day ultimatum to make substantial improvements following its response to the coronavirus outbreak. Moderna's vaccine results added more than $5 billion to the big four airlines' market value. United stock surged 21% on Monday. Delta and Southwest jumped more than 13%, and American rose 9% as investors bet on an industry recovery. Hasn't happened yet. That's wishful thinking. That's called hopium. You hope for something that hasn't happened yet. Chinese oil demand has reportedly almost rebounded to pre-pandemic levels. Gasoline and diesel are leading the oil recovery as commuters are choosing to drive rather than use public transportation. TikTok poaches Disney's top streaming executive to be its new CEO. Kevin Mayer, Disney's head of streaming, will now oversee all of the video sharing app's global operations out of Los Angeles. JP Morgan hands out $30 billion in loans to small businesses. The bank approved more than $45 billion in new credit for its clients impacted by the coronavirus 19 pandemic, or should we say plandemic. Zoom suspends new free user registration in China. The video conferencing provider is limiting new user registrations in mainland China to enterprise customers only. Again, now we have companies being political. As a company, you only care about profits. You don't care who signs up and uses your products. That has nothing to do with you. You're in the business of selling services. So why do they care? U.S. overtakes China as most attractive country for renewables investment. In an annual ranking of top 40 renewable energy markets worldwide by consultancy EY, the U.S. was ranked first for the first time since 2016. Asian stocks are up. In Europe, Germany's DAX fell 0.8%, Britain's FTSE 100 fell 0.7%, and the Euro stocks 50 fell 0.7%. In Asia, China's Shanghai Composite rose 0.8%, Hong Kong's Hang Seng rose 1.8%, and Japan's Nikkei rose 1.4%. At the close. In the U.S., futures underlying the Dow Jones Industrial Average, the S&P 500, and the NASDAQ fell between 0.3 and 0.9%. First quarter results expected. Walmart and Home Depot are highlights. On the data docket today, housing starts and building permits are due. Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell will testify before the Senate about the coronavirus and economic uncertainty. That will be humongous. That is probably why the markets are mad quiet, because no one wants to commit anything large ahead of a Fed testimony. All right, so that is a big, big, big deal. Excuse me. So we have to look and see what's going on here. Let's look underneath the curtain and let's see. All right, we're gonna bounce around a little bit today. Let's see here. Okay, give me just a second. All right. Yeah, we got a few interesting things we're going to get into this morning. All right. All right. One more thing. All right. Let's see. All right. Yeah, we got some things to talk about this morning. Just had to get a few things on and popping. Just give me 1 second. All right, let's get into a few things here right quick. All right, so this morning, what we're gonna do, we're gonna look at some more, look into depth a little bit more to the whole situation that we found ourselves in with this whole lockdown. Then we're gonna take a look at some economic situations. And I think today will probably be a little short, just not a whole lot to deal with and talk about. All right, so first of all, I'll say what's up to everybody in the live. If you can do me a big favor and hit that like button, I would highly appreciate it. Okay, so first things first. First things first. All right, so now that the nation is starting to reopen itself back up a little bit, it's going to be interesting. All right, so here's a nice little article. Now begins the grand effort on display in thousands of articles and news broadcasts daily, somehow to normalize the lockdown and all its destruction of the last 2 months. That's right, guys. The world was shut down for 2 months. We didn't lock down almost the entire country in 1968 and 69 or 1957 or 1949 through 1952 or even during 1918. But in a terrifying few days in March of 2020, it happened to all of us, causing an avalanche of social, cultural, and economic destruction that will ring through the ages. There was nothing normal about it at all. We'll be trying to figure out what happened to us for decades. How did a temporary plan to preserve hospital capacity turn into 2 to 3 months of near universal house arrest that ended up causing worker furloughs at 256 hospitals, a stoppage of international travel, a 40% job loss among people earning less than $40,000 a year, devastation of every economic sector, mass confusion, and demoralization, a complete ignoring of all fundamental rights and liberties, not to mention the mass confiscation of private property with forced closures of millions of businesses. Now, here's something to think about. If there's a pandemic, right, why is there a furlough at 256 hospitals? You would think that all the hospitals worldwide would be just overfilled, filled to capacity, out of control. You would see mass units out in the street. You would see mass units on the interstate. They even would turn the Brooklyn Bridge into one big mass unit. You would see the White House lawn. You would see tents all over the place. Just tents will be everywhere. Mass units everywhere. As people from all around are just collapsing and dying in the street, and before you can even get to the mass unit, they're just collapsing. You see entire buildings quarantined, and just all types of just pandemonium. But we wasn't seeing that at all. As a matter of fact, technically speaking, we wasn't seeing much of anything because we were under house arrest. You couldn't leave your house. And meanwhile, while all that was going on, we saw them slyly, sneakingly, craftingly, all right? We saw the world governments moving like spider monkeys and sidewinders and diamondbacks and water moccasins and kaboom vipers throwing up 5G everywhere. I tell you, man, and you guys wrote the same people back in the office. I tell you, man, when are you going to learn? Whatever the answer, it's got to be a bizarre tale. What's truly surprising is just how recent the theory behind lockdown and forced distancing actually is. So far as anyone can tell, the intellectual machinery that made this mess was invented 14 years ago, and not by epidemiologists, but by computer simulation modelers. It was adopted not by experienced doctors, they warned ferociously against it, but by politicians. All right, you guys need to hear me. This was not a medical situation. Epidemiologists were not consulted. This was done by a computer modeler. All right, they had nothing to do with science. All right, this had not, the lockdowns had nothing to do with science. I repeat, the lockdowns had nothing to do with science. Epidemiologists were not part of the computer simulation models. It was about politics and crafty sneakiness so that they can install these antennae all around the world. Let's start with the phased social distancing, which has mutated into forced human separation and house arrest and the suspension of civil rights worldwide. The first I had heard it was in the 2009 movie Contagion. The first time it appeared in the New York Times was February the 12th, 2006. If the avian flu goes pandemic while Tamiflu and vaccines are still in short supply, experts say the only protection most Americans will have is social distancing, which is the new politically correct way of saying quarantine. But distancing also encompasses less drastic measures like wearing face masks, staying out of elevators, and the elbow bump. Such stratagems, those experts say, will rewrite the ways we interact, at least during the weeks when the waves of influenza are washing over us. Maybe you don't remember that the avian flu of 2006 didn't amount to much. It's true. Despite all the extreme warnings about its lethality, H5N1 didn't turn into much at all. What it did do, however, was send the existing president, George W. Bush, to the library to read about the 1918 flu and its catastrophic results. He asked for some experts to submit some plans to him about what to do when the real thing comes along. The New York Times, April the 22nd, 2020, tells the story from there. 14 years ago, two federal government doctors, Richard Hatchett and Carter Mecker, met with a colleague at a burger joint in suburban Washington for a final review of a proposal they knew would be treated like a piñata, telling Americans to stay home from work and school the next time the country was hit by a deadly pandemic. When they presented their plan not long after, it was met with skepticism and a degree of ridicule by senior officials who, like others in the United States, had grown accustomed to relying on the pharmaceutical industry. The pharmaceutical industry, relying on the pharmaceutical industry, relying on the pharmaceutical industry. Underline that. With its ever-growing array of new synthetic drug treatments to confront evolving health challenges. Remember, they're in the business of treatment, not cure. Treatment, not cure. Treatment, not cure. Doctors Hatchett and Merker were proposing instead that Americans in some places might have to turn back to an approach of self-isolation first widely employed in the Middle Ages. Once again, you do not isolate the healthy, you isolate the sick, going back to biblical times, which is thousands of years before the Middle Ages. How that idea, born out of a request by President George W. Bush to ensure the nation was better prepared for the next contagious disease outbreak, became the heart of the national playbook for responding to a pandemic. It's one of the untold stories of the coronavirus crisis. It required the key proponents, Dr. Mecker, a Department of Veteran Affairs physician, and Dr. Hatchett, an oncologist turned White House advisor, to overcome intense initial opposition. It brought their work together with that of a Defense Department team assigned to a similar task. And it had unexpected detours, including a deep dive into the history of the 1918 Spanish flu and an important discovery kicked off by a high school research project pursued by the daughter of a scientist at the Sandia National Laboratories. The concept of social distancing is now intimately familiar to almost everyone. But as it first made its way through the federal bureaucracy in 2006 and 2007, it was viewed as impractical, unnecessary, and politically infeasible. Notice that in the course of this planning, neither legal nor economic experts were brought in to consult and advise. Ladies and gentlemen, you're electing people who don't know what they're doing. And not only do they not know what they're doing, they refuse to ask for help from the appropriate authorities. All right? This is what we need to be aware of. What in the Fraggle Rock is going on? As a president, you gotta speak with the heads of everything. When it comes to a medical outbreak, you want to talk to your top physicians. You want to talk to your epidemiologists immediately. Get me the epidemiologist in here right now. And then when they talk about when someone recommends to you they want to shut things down, the next thing you got to bring in, say, no, I want to bring in my economist, bring in my economic advisors. All right, because we need to hash this thing out. Bring in all of that because we need to get to the bottom of things. You know, and then there has to be real questions asked. You got to literally sit down at the table with all of your various advisors from different disciplines. You got to talk to your economist and you got to talk to your health team. You got to. You got to. And if they disagree, that's even better because now you as a president, you're supposed to be a man of wisdom. That's why you sought this job, because you're a man of wisdom. So you will hear what both sides have to say, and then you will come up with questions for them. Now, 9 times out of 10, most politicians are lawyers by trade. They have Juris Doctorates. They went to law school, so they understand law. So that means they should understand how to interrogate people and cross-examine people and get to the bottom of things, even learning to ask the questions that you don't know enough to know that you don't know. You always have to at least end with that. What is it that you're not telling me that I don't know that you're not telling me because I don't know enough about this discipline to know? And you start from basic questions to complex questions and demand straightforward answers. Why don't you know? Get back to me when you do know. That's you have to do that. And then the next thing you look at, okay, is there historical precedence for what you are telling me to do right now? If there's no historical precedence, what leads you to believe that this is going to work now? And then you got to bring in, and if it's anything that has to do with homeland security, like, implosion from within or invasion from without, that's when you sit down with your head, with your, with your warriors and say, okay, are we safe? Are we locked? Do you have everything in place so that while we're going through these circumstances, we will not be invaded from without or from within? What does your experience tell you with this? What should we do? What should we not do? Right? And then you got your constitutional lawyers in front of you. Okay, Mr. From a historical perspective, what sayeth you on this, and how does this affect the Constitution and all this other stuff? Because at the end of the day, you always want to protect your citizenry, and you want to be able to encourage your citizenry too, and you also want to be able to lead by example, because a president is not just a spokesman for the government, he is also commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Therefore, he needs to be advised in all areas. All areas. And he should be able to bridge the aisles. Doesn't matter if it's Democrat or Republican. We all know they're the same at the end of the day behind closed doors, but you get what I'm saying. You want to hear from the people as well. And the representatives are supposed to represent their people, their districts, their state where they're from. Mr. Smith, how are things in Wyoming? I understand that blah 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 and blah. So what are your people saying? What's the word on the street? I know the streets is talking. What's the word on the streets? That's how it's supposed to be. All right. But because we don't have King David in office, this is not happening. This is not happening. Because King David is not in office. And neither do they have the spirit of King David. If our leaders had the spirit of King David, it would be different, because they would care about the people. What am I getting at? We have people in office that do not care about the people that they're supposed to represent. What they care about is money and power. And so the money and the power corrupt them. Our entire system needs to be straight up overhauled. Everything about it. Why does it cost millions of dollars to run for a political office? Who would spend that kind of money, millions of dollars, to run for a political office that only pays you, tens of thousands of dollars a year? What, 70,000 for a senator or something like that? That's no money. You're spending millions to make thousands? That does not seem logical. And people haven't really thought about that until now. Now you want to think about it. Why would someone spend millions of dollars to get paid thousands, tens of thousands? The real reason is because of power. There's power that comes with that position. And the majority of people, when they leave office, leave richer financially than they were before they entered into office. All right? They do it because of the power. Needs to be overhauled, people. Get the idiots out of office and overhaul the system. So here we go. Notice that in the course of this planning, neither legal nor economic experts were brought in to consult and advise. That's strike number one. Instead, it fell to Mecker, formerly of Chicago, and an intensive care doctor with no previous expertise in pandemics, and the oncologist Hatchett. But what is this mention of the high school daughter of 14? Her name is Laura M. Glass, and she recently declined to be interviewed when the Albuquerque Journal did a deep dive of this history. Laura, with some guidance from her dad, devised a computer simulation that showed how people, family members, co-workers, students in schools, people in social situations interact. What she discovered was that school kids come in contact with about 140 people a day, more than any other group. Based on that finding, her program showed that in a hypothetical town of 10,000 people, 5,000 would be infected during the pandemic if no measures were taken, but only 500 would be infected if the schools were closed. Man, there's so many holes in that. And she's only 14. Now, if she was 14 with an IQ of 400, then that would be a different story. But obviously, that is not the case. There's so many holes in this. You said in your study, little girl, that the average school kid comes in contact with about 140 people a day. I don't know where in the world you came up with that number, but that is not true, especially when you said in a hypothetical town of 10,000 people. Okay, so first of all, that's rural America. In the inner city, there are vastly more people than in rural America. In addition to that, it is not necessarily that a person comes into contact with that many people a day. And what is your definition of contact? Do you mean within 50 feet Do you mean within a square mile? What is your definition of contact, and where did you get 140 people from? Now, in my high school, we had about 700 students. I did not come in contact with 140 people a day because I didn't talk to 140 people in a day. I did not interact or get close up to 140 people a day. All right, that wasn't me. Even though I was pretty popular in my school, that wasn't me. I never liked crowds, hated them. Still don't like crowds to this day. So 140 people, I think not. A lot of people say to themselves they come in contact with very few people, if any at all, even in a crowded space. In addition to that, little girl, it should be noted that you did not take into account the infection rates, such as what they claimed with the coronavirus, that it was on surfaces. So with that logic, it's flawed, because if there was coronavirus on the door handle of the school, every person that entered the school would have to touch that door. So in her example of 5,000 people, pretty much know that would be your entire school. And if that coronavirus is on the door handles of a major corporation or a big office where people work, and let's say 2,000 or 3,000 people worked in that office building, well, guess what? 2,000 or 3,000 people also now infected, because 2,000 or 3,000 people had to touch the door to get into the building, and they had to push the up or down button on the elevators when they rode the elevator. So everyone in your town would be infected. You see what happens? You see what happens when your scientific method has holes in it? All right. So that whole model was off. Just because you model something, it doesn't mean that your model is correct. Models have to be tested in real time with real examples, real tests. You have a theory, but now it has to be tested. I guarantee you that none of that was thought about. Laura's name appears on the foundational paper arguing for lockdowns and forced human separation. No proof that any of that has worked, does work, or has ever worked in the past. That paper is targeted social distancing designs for pandemic influenza 2006. It set out a model for forced separation and applied with good results backwards in time to 1957. First of all, that is not good results because you have tweaked the numbers. All right, folks, time for another lesson. This is back testing 101. There is a situation when it comes to back testing models, and it's a pitfall and a trap that we can fall into as what I like to call systems people. All right. So when you are building and designing any type of a system, any type of a model, and you are back testing said model, your back test is only going to be as good as the quality of the data that you plug into the said model. In addition to that, the more data you have, the more accurate your model should become if it's a good model. If the rules of the model are cogent, if they are logical and concise, then you can get pretty good results. Keep in mind, though, even though you have data going back to the Garden of Eden, your model is still going to be only as good and accurate as A, the quality of the data you put into it, B, the quality of your algorithm. If your algorithm sucks, if your scientific method of building said model sucks, then your results are going to suck. I don't know why people think that all they have to do is build a model or a quote unquote system, plug data into it, and all of a sudden you have this robust, incredible, prophetic crystal ball model. It doesn't work that way. Here's the trap that most modelers come into and fall into. It is a term that is new to some of you today, but you're going to hear it. It's called curve fitting. What is curve fitting? Curve fitting is when you put in the data that you want to get out. It's when you tweak the data mining to such a degree that it's going to spit out the results that you want. You filter out all the bad results until you get to the really good results, and then say, look, I have a robust, incredible methodology. I have an amazing model that I've back tested all the way to 1957. First of all, that is not nearly enough data for that type of a model. 1957 from 2006 ain't nothing. If you wanted to really be authentic and honest, you would have went back to that 1918 Spanish influenza joint. You would have went back there, and don't tell me ain't no data for it, because there's plenty of data for it. Didn't want to go there because that would have blew your model up. Your model would have exploded. It would have blew up because your model is whack. You curve fit your model. Prove me wrong. Prove me wrong. I almost guarantee this model was curb fit, because look at the words that were used. It said pretty good results, but it didn't give you the actual results. See what I'm saying? And notice how they led with the smallest sample data. The smallest sample data was looking at rural America, where there's less people. They did not do thorough analysis on larger data sets in cities and countries with many people. All right. So this is the problem of models. People think because some talking head on TV that seems or comes off pretty intellectual and smart has put together a model or a system means that it's right or that it's dope. If that was the case, then every model that anyone would ever build would be incredible. It doesn't work that way. I'm sorry. This thing was curb fit from the beginning, and I just needed to expose that to you. The data set that they just exposed is whack. No one does that. You do not build a robust, accurate model with limited data. The more data, the better, because you really want to take your model through the paces. You got to be cruel to your model. You got to put in the wackest data you can find, like the Spanish flu with millions of people infected and dying. You want to go as hard body karate as you can. You want to mistreat your model. You want to be rude to your model. You want to be a tyrant with your model. You want to feed it the most complex, crazy data you can find, and see if your model, if your system can handle it, if it can perform well in it. Don't come to me saying you tested only back to 1957. There's nothing going on in 1957. What are you talking about as compared to 1918? And if you're talking about separating people, you need to put in all of the most crucial data you can find. Forget that. You need to go back to the Black Death. Go back to the 12th and 13th centuries, man. Plug that data in there, and let's see how your system does then. You feel me? Frank M in the live chat. That is dope. My man says this is the result of Common Core. Common Core results of public education. You right about that, man. You right about that. So that's what happens, man. That's what happens. All right. So this is whack. I had to break it down for those that are not accustomed to such language, and when it comes to modeling and systems, because I am a systems guy. My trading methodology is a systems-based, rule-based methodology. I can speak authoritatively on the subject and even come off dogmatic. I know. And of course, I gave you no trigger alerts. Deal with it. All right. Laura's name appears on the foundational paper arguing for lockdowns. It set out a model for forced separation, and it applied. It says, and it applied it with good results backwards in time to 1957. We just blew that whole thing up. They conclude with a chilling call for what amounts to a totalitarian lockdown, all stated very matter-of-factly. I don't know how you can be matter-of-factly with quote-unquote good results backwards in time to 1957. First of all, 1957 is not far back enough. You need to go back hundreds of years, sweetie. And as far as good results, no such thing as good results. When you're talking about a model and when you're talking about something this big, it's not like that. Hold on one second. All right. Sorry about that. Had a family emergency. All right. Here we go. See, that's why I wish I had some kind of music. I could play radio music while you wait for me, some elevator music or something. All right. So, yeah, if you guys have kids, you know how it is. You know what it is. All right. So, let's see here. Okay. Implementation of a social distancing strategy is challenging. They likely must be imposed for duration of the local epidemic and possibly until a strain-specific vaccine is developed and distributed. If compliance with the strategy is high over this period, an epidemic within a community can be averted. However, if neighboring communities do not also use these interventions, infected neighbors will continue to introduce influenza and prolong the local epidemic, albeit at a depressed level more easily accommodated by healthcare systems. In other words, it was a high school science experiment that eventually became law of the land, and through uh, I can't speak this morning. Securities route propelled not by science but politics. The primary author of this paper was Robert J. Glass, a complex systems analyst with Sandia National Laboratories. He had no medical training, much less an expertise in immunology or epidemiology. That explains why Dr. D.A. Henderson, who had been the leader of the international effort to eradicate smallpox, completely rejected the whole scheme. Says the New York Times, Dr. Henderson was convinced that it made no sense to force schools to close or public gatherings to stop. Teenagers would escape their homes to hang out at the mall. School lunch programs would close, and impoverished children would not have enough to eat. Hospital staff would have a hard time going to work if their children were at home. The measures embraced by Dr. Merker and Hatchett will result in significant disruption of the social functioning of communities and result in possibly serious economic problems. Dr. Henderson wrote in his own academic paper responding to their ideas. The answer, he insisted, was to tough it out. Let the pandemic spread, treat people who get sick, and work quickly to develop a vaccine to prevent it from coming back. That was extremely well stated. Extremely well stated. Now, it's funny because what this is exposing is that everything that we just experienced originated from a high school science project. Are you trying to tell me we are so without experts that we had to rely on a high school science experiment and then have the nerve to call that science? And then have the gall to call everything that was speaking out against it fake news? So not only did this whole thing start from a high school brain with limited to no intelligence on this incredibly complex discipline, but then you backed it as good scientific method, and then you started banning people who spoke out against it as fake news. So not only is the governments of the world complicit in this foolish chicanery, but I say they should all be ousted from office. Every president, every world leader that fell on board with this should be ousted because they don't know what they're talking about. They are not qualified to lead. And because of them, you have now single-handedly plunged the entire world into depression and bankruptcy. You allowed a high school underdeveloped brain to have say over the world economic system. You allowed a underdeveloped teenage brain to have the last say on how independent countries run their country. You let an underdeveloped teenage brain. The cerebral cortex isn't even fully developed. You allowed an underdeveloped teenage brain that physically lacks, that scientifically and medically lacks the ability to foresee outcomes. Did you not know that? An underdeveloped teenage brain has no grasp on the world of consequences and repercussions and cannot physically think about long distance future ramifications. That part of their brain does not even become fully developed or even on the process until the age of 19. And really, some argue not until like 21. So you allowed a baby to have say over how every country on the planet runs its government. You let an infant control and run your economy. You let an infant tell you how to handle epidemiology, immunology, all this. You allowed a baby to do this. Thanks, Linkster. I couldn't get everything out. Thanks for hooking me up. Yeah, here are the facts, ladies and gentlemen, right here. The frontal cortex development is finalized around 25 years of age. Thank you. That's what I was reaching for. When you have so many ideas and stuff bouncing around in your brain, you can't get it out. Oh, did I just expose myself? Maybe my frontal cortex isn't developed yet. Anyway, that's right. You let boss baby tell you what to do. What kind of foolishness is this? I don't know what else. I'm speechless. I don't know what else to say. This is poppycock nonsense. AIER's Phil Magnus got to work to find the literature responding to this 2006 and discovered disease mitigation measures in the control of pandemic influenza. The authors included D.A. Henderson, along with 3 professors from Johns Hopkins, infectious disease specialist Thomas V. Inglesby, epidemiologist Jennifer B. Nuzzo, and physician Tara O'Toole. Their paper is a remarkably readable refutation of the entire lockdown model. There are no historical observations or scientific studies that support the confinement by quarantine of groups. No historical. N-O. No. Nothing. Zero. Zilch. Nada. Nathan. No historical observations or scientific studies that support the confinement by quarantine of groups of possibly infected people for extended periods in order to slow the spread of influenza. It is difficult to identify circumstances in the past half century when large-scale quarantine has been effectively used in the control of any disease. In the control of any disease. The negative consequences of large-scale quarantine are so extreme. Forced confinement of sick people with the well, complete restriction of movement of large populations, difficulty in getting critical supplies, medicines, and food to people inside the quarantine zone. That this mitigation measure should be eliminated from serious consideration. In other words, are you really going to take the underdeveloped brain seriously? Home quarantine also raises ethical questions. Implementation of home quarantine could result in healthy, unaffected people being placed at risk of infection from sick household members. Practices to reduce the chance of transmission, hand washing, maintaining a distance of 3 feet from infected people, etc., could be recommended, but a policy imposing home quarantine would preclude, for example, sending healthy children to stay with relatives when a family member becomes ill. Such a policy would also be particularly hard on the dangerous to people living in close quarters where the risk of infection would be heightened. In other words, you guys, there is no excuse for this. So, being the logical people that we are, you know what? We have to assume now, based on the evidence therein, that this was done on purpose, because I refuse to believe that those that have been elected into elected office are this dumb, stupid, and incompetent. I refuse to believe that our elected officials are dumb, stupid, incompetent people. After all, we've already established that the majority of our elected officials have law degrees. They're lawyers. They have Juris Doctorates. So they are doctors of this thing, okay? They have Juris Doctors. They've passed the bar. They've practiced law to some capacity. They're lawyers. You don't graduate law school being a dumb idiot. You need to have some type of intellectual capacity to break down information and internalize information, which is called intellect, in order to even graduate even the worst law school. And the bar is no joke. That's why people fail the bar. All right? So I refuse to believe that our elected officials are dumb, stupid, incompetent people. I refuse to believe that, because so far what we have established here this morning is that we are left with no other alternative but to assume that based on said evidence. Because this paper was written for all to see. We even have medical doctors as elected officials. Some of them are medical doctors, which means they have had medical training. Okay? You don't graduate medical school being a dumb, stupid, incompetent person. On the contrary, again, it takes a lot of intellectual engine to do that sort of thing. Medicine is complicated. All right? You still got to know some stuff. Even if all you do is write prescriptions like most doctors, you still can't be an idiot and be dumb and stupid and incompetent to do that. All right? It takes brain power to obtain a doctorate of any level. All right? These are disciplined skill sets. All right? And you have to compete to boot. So no, I can't believe that these elected officials are this dumb, stupid, and incompetent, which that leaves us with only one other lane to go down, and that is it was done deliberately and on purpose, and that they knew what they were doing. And then they took it even further, and they basically criminalized anyone who came with an alternative message, anyone that was critical of their message. You don't do that. You don't need to protect the truth. The truth is the truth and will stand on its own merit. You don't have to defend the truth. You don't have to stand for the truth in place of the truth. The truth will always win because it's the truth. You only need to defend lies. Lies need to be defended. Lies need to be covered up. Lies need to be insulated from truth getting in. Lies need to be protected. That's why it's called conspiracy. Conspiracy. Because conspiracy involves putting a wall around the truth so no one can get to it. Not only do you build a wall around the truth, but then you stack it with army men. You put little army men on top of the wall and on the bottom of the wall and behind the wall. Should anyone penetrate that wall, you got your little army men in place so that, you're protecting this wall. You're protecting this truth. Truth doesn't need to be protected. The reason why it's been insulated is because you don't want people getting to the truth. Wake up, people. Wake up. They put a wall around the truth because they don't want you getting to it. And if you even dare scale the wall of truth, you were hit with all types of censorship on social media. Banned off of YouTube, banned off of Twitter, banned off of Twitter, ban. Shame on you. You don't need to do that, folks, with the truth. You only need to do that for lies. Lies are combated like that, with force. You got to protect the lie. In order to protect the lie, you got to cover up the truth. And don't let it see the light of day. Lock it up in the dungeon in the deepest basement so no one can get to it, and put armed guards around it and barbed wire and electric fences and missiles and nuclear warheads that if anyone even dares to get next to it, the whole thing will blow up. Can you guys please open your eyes just a little bit? Travel restrictions, such as closing airports and screening travelers at borders, have historically been ineffective. Historically ineffective. What does that mean? It means that not a model, but you have real historical precedents, meaning that this is something that has happened already in the real world, and here are your results. Deal with it. The World Health Organization writing group concluded that screening and quarantining entering travelers at international borders did not substantially delay virus introduction in past pandemics and will likely be even less effective in the modern era. It is reasonable to assume that the economic cost of shutting down air on travel trains will be very high, and the societal cost involved in interrupting all air or train travel would be extreme. So interrupting all air or train travel is considered extreme. These are epidemiologists, immunologists telling you this. During seasonal influenza epidemics, public events with an expected large attendance have sometimes been canceled or postponed. The rationale being to decrease the number of contacts with those who might be contagious. There are, however, no certain indications that these actions have had any definitive effect on the severity or duration of an epidemic. No effect on the severity or duration of the epidemic. Were consideration to be given to doing this on a more extensive scale and for an extended period, questions immediately arise as to how many such events would be affected. There are many social gatherings that involve close contacts among people, and this prohibition might include church services, athletic events, perhaps all meetings of more than 100 people. It might mean closing theaters, restaurants, malls, large stores, and bars. Implementing such measures would have seriously disruptive consequences. Seriously disruptive consequences. Again, an underdeveloped teenage brain has no physical way to even contemplate consequences, ladies and gentlemen. It's impossible. It's like expecting a man to speak with no tongue. He can't do it. Or run with no legs. He can't do it. Schools are often closed for 1 to 2 weeks early in the development of seasonal community outbreaks of influenza, primarily because of high absentee rates, especially in elementary school, and because illness among teachers. This would seem reasonable on practical grounds. However, to close schools for longer periods is not only impractical, but carries their possibility of a serious adverse outcome. Serious adverse outcome. Thus, canceling or postponing large meetings would not be likely to have any significant effect on the development of the epidemic. While local concerns may result in the closure of particular events for logical reasons, a policy directing community-wide closure of public events seems inadvisable. Quarantine, as experience shows, there is no basis for recommending quarantine either of groups or individuals. The problems in implementing such measures are formidable, and secondary effects of absenteeism and community disruption, as well as possible adverse consequences. There's that word again, consequences, such as loss of public trust in government and stigmatization of quarantined people, are likely to be considerable. The stigmatization of quarantined people is likely to be considerable. See now, you see, we live in a world now when hey, I don't like stigmas on people groups, but this is exactly what you would be doing. Once again, I refuse to believe that our elected officials are stupid, dumb, or incompetent. Therefore, this leads me to believe that all of this was done on purpose, and we believe that because of the measures that they implemented to keep the truth from seeing the light of day, such as censorship. Finally, the remarkable conclusion. Experience has shown that communities faced with epidemics or other adverse events respond best and with the least anxiety when the normal social functioning of the community is least disrupted. Strong political and public health leadership to provide reassurance and to ensure that needed medical care services are provided are critical elements. If either is seen to be less than optimal, a manageable epidemic could move toward catastrophe. The result of the actions and thought processes of an underdeveloped teenage brain leads us to catastrophe. Confronting a manageable epidemic and turning it into a catastrophe that seems like a good description of everything that has happened in the COVID-19 crisis of 2020. Thus, did some of the most highly trained and experienced experts on epidemics warn with biting rhetoric against everything that the advocates of lockdown proposed? It was not even a real world idea in the first place and showed no actual knowledge of viruses and disease mitigation. Again, the idea was born of a high school science experiment from a teenager with an underdeveloped brain with no capacity to understand or to even comprehend or contemplate the end results, the consequences of said actions. The idea was born of a high school science experiment using agent-based modeling techniques having nothing at all to do with real life, real scientific method, or real medicine. No real life, no real scientific method, no real medicine. No, no, and no. So the question becomes, how did the extreme view prevail? Now we're going in. The New York Times has the answer. The Bush administration ultimately sided with the proponents of social distancing and shutdowns, though their victory was little noticed outside of public health circles. Their policy would become the basis for government planning and would be used extensively in simulations used to prepare for pandemics and in a limited way in 2009 during an outbreak of the influenza called H1N1. Then the coronavirus came and the plan was put to work across the country, you mean the world, for the first time. Now, here's something that is quite ironic, the irony of this situation. I thought people said that George Bush was an idiot. I thought they said that he lacked the capacity of intellectual thought. If that was the case, then why did you allow this man to set precedents for medicine and epidemiology and disease mitigation? Why? The Times called one of the pro-lockdown researchers, Dr. Howard Markle, and asked what he thought of the lockdowns. His answer? He is glad that his work was used to save lives, but added, "It is so horrifying." We always knew this would be applied in worst case scenarios, he said. Even when you are working on dystopian concepts, you always hope it will never be used. Ideas have consequences. I repeat, ideas have consequences. Dream up an idea for a virus controlling totalitarian society, one without an end game and eschewing any experience-based evidence that it would achieve the goal, and you might see it implemented someday. Lockdown might be the new orthodoxy, but that doesn't make it medically sound or morally correct. At least now we know that many great doctors and scholars in 2006 did their best to stop this nightmare from unfolding. Their mighty papers should serve as a blueprint for dealing with the next pandemic. But you guys know what? It won't be. You know it, and I know it. You know it. You know this. It's not gonna happen. It just ain't. Okay? Because the powers that be don't want it. They don't want it to be. And so guess what? It won't. And those are just facts that we need to deal with, people. Okay? Deal with it. Deal with it. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and post that link here in the live chat for you, so you can digest that at your leisure. All right, let's move on. U.S. housing starts, permits plunge to 5-year lows. Having already collapsed in March, analysts expected further terrible weakness in both housing starts and building permits in April as the impact of lockdowns really escalated, and the data did indeed come in ugly. Housing starts fell 30.2% month over month in April, worse than the 26% drop expected, and accelerating considerably from the 22.3% drop in March. This is a record drop. Building permits fell 20.8% month over month in April, better than the 25.9% expected. The SAAR chart is a bloodbath with starts at their lowest since February 2015 and permits lowest since January 2015. Multifamily starts dominated the drop, down over 40% to the lowest since April of 2013. Single family starts were down 25.4% to 650,000, the lowest since March of 2015. Single family permits plunged 24.3% to 669,000, excuse me, the lowest since March of 2015. And multi-unit permits dropped 12.4% to 373,000, the lowest since February of 2017. As a reminder, applications to build are a proxy for future construction, and the biggest drops were in the Northeast, negative 45.5% for single family, and the West, negative 33.2% for single family. That is nasty. Nasty. But now we need to talk about some market stuff. We have a little conversation about some market stuff. All right, here we go. Here we go. S&P futures fail a breakout above 3,000 as a triple top forms. Get your sale tickets ready. It's almost time to back up the truck and short the stuffings out of these markets. Please note, this is not a recommendation to buy or sell securities. Please consult with your financial advisor before taking any plunge into any financial investing techniques or strategies. Did y'all like how I did that? That was neat, wasn't it? All right, U.S. equity futures tried and failed to stage a major breakout into 3,000 overnight, with the E-mini rising as high as 2,976 and a quarter, ahead of the European Open on virtually zero volume. Before pairing all gains alongside a drop in European stocks as investors weighed the return of the trade war against positive coronavirus news, while disappointing results from Home Depot weighed on sentiment and not even a huge beat by Walmart managed to reverse the mood. What is more concerning is now that the S&P has tried and failed to break out above 2950 resistance level, a triple top appear has formed, which suggests that the most likely next move is a retest of the support. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, dun. All right, now it should be noted, you guys, that if we close above 29.50 today, then it just kind of just rips this whole article to pieces and it becomes obsolete. The stocks Europe 600 index remained lower. However, as investors shrugged off both news of a $546 billion recovery fund for the region and a surprise jump in German investor confidence, with the ZEW economist sentiment surging to 51 from 28.2, beating expectations of a 32 print and far above the deeply negative print just 2 months ago. European sentiment slumped after French Finance Minister Bruno Le Maire said that the European Recovery Fund proposed by France and Germany won't be available until 2021 and still faces hurdles and difficult negotiations in coming weeks. It probably couldn't be available before the start of 2021. Le Maire says, speaking at the National Assembly Finance Committee, Le Maire says it will take time because procedures still need to be finalized and the fund will be linked to the EU budget. The finance minister also said Franco-German agreement on the fund was necessary but not sufficient, and the two countries must still convince reluctant countries, including Austria, Denmark, Sweden, and the Netherlands. What up to my Nordic folk? Earlier in the session, Asian stocks were green across the board, lifted by momentum from the U.S. and led by materials and industrials after rising in the last session. All markets in the region were up, with South Korea's Kospi index gaining 2.2% and Hong Kong's Hang Seng index rising 1.9%. The topics gained 1.8%, with Soshin Electric and Sony Financial rising the most. The Shanghai Composite Index rose 0.8%, with Fujian Start Group and Shanghai Linguin Industries Development posting the biggest advances. Stocks started off the week with a bang after Moderna fueled hopes for a coronavirus vaccine, but investors are struggling to maintain the optimism as they continue to monitor efforts to both contain the pandemic and restart economies. Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell is scheduled to speak on the state of the recovery Tuesday. Amid expectations, he'll press for further fiscal support to address the steepest downturn since the Depression. Short-lived bounces in stock prices, even while markets establish new lows, are not unheard of. Let's see here. Ashwin Alankar, head of global asset allocation at Janus Henderson, said in a note, forward-looking metrics such as earning revisions and options prices, on the other hand, sound a more cautious tone, both for the economy and stock prices. Meanwhile, headwinds remain for stocks, not least a deteriorating U.S.-China relationship and a further sign of tightening scrutiny on capital flows to the Asian nation. Reuters reports late on Monday that the NASDAQ is set to unveil new rules for initial public offerings, including tougher accounting standards that will make it more difficult for some Chinese companies to list on the exchange. So you see that right there is nothing but politics because of the trade war with China. Now they're trying to make it even tougher for China to do business in the U.S. They love changing the rules. Now they're trying to make it impossible for them to even get listed on the NASDAQ because they've thrown in more bureaucratic hurdles. In rates, the 10-year Treasury was unchanged after yields blew out on Monday, while European government bonds were mixed, with peripheral yields falling on the recovery fund news. In forex, the Bloomberg Dollar Spot Index fell. The euro and European peripheral bonds extended gains in the wake of a proposal by France and Germany to distribute money to member states. The yen fell to a one-week low against the dollar after the news that the Bank of Japan will discuss details of a funding program to demonstrate its resolve to support struggling businesses. The New Zealand dollar advanced, supported by purchases against the Aussie. Sterling strengthened after the UK announced plans for 30 billion pounds, which is 37 billion US dollars, and tariff cuts after Brexit. China's yuan fell to a 2-month low against a basket of trading partners currencies as the central bank's reference rate stays close to the weakest since 2008. The Bloomberg replica of the CFETS RMB index, which tracks the yuan against 24 currencies, declined 0.27% to 93.5, the lowest level since March 12th. That comes as the People's Bank of China kept the yuan's fixings versus major exchange rates low. The authorities cut its reference rate versus the euro by the most in 7 weeks Tuesday, while the fixing against the dollar was close to the weakest since 2008. But the yuan has been steady in the spot market, with the currency fluctuating within a narrow band of less than 0.85% on either side this month. That's partly because traders expect the Chinese exchange rate to be stable ahead of the annual parliamentary meeting, which starts this week. In commodities, West Texas crude accent kept it well above $32 a barrel, rising for a fourth day, though it came off highs touched in Asia trade. West Texas intermediate crude increased 2.9% to $32.73 a barrel. In terms of underlying fundamentals on the demand side, participants continue to eye reopening economies for any signs of potential risk of reclosures. Meanwhile, looking at supply, OPEC cuts are underway, with eyes on the June 8th JMMC meeting for further details as to whether current cuts will be extended, as per source, which floated potential extensions to year-end as opposed to a wind down of agreed curbs. Meanwhile, unsurprisingly, OPEC cuts oil exports sharply in the first half of May, according to trackers, which boils down to a function of lower supply and lower demand. WTI July meanders around $31.50 a barrel, whilst its Brent counterpart failed to reclaim the USD $35 a barrel to the upside, with both contracts contained within basically $2 a barrel intraday bands. Elsewhere, spot gold trades flat in recent trade after failing to nurse some of yesterday's sentiment-induced losses, with the yellow metal now waiting for the Powell-Munchin double testimony as a scheduled potential catalyst. They are speaking, but so far, we're not really doing much. Copper prices have given an overnight gains as the sentiment in Europe somewhat soured as U.S.-Sino tensions remained elevated, whilst the EU still has to overcome obstacles before launch of their recovery fund touted to be implemented January of 2021. Wow. So that is very interesting geopolitical information that's going on right now. All right, now here is another interesting one. Did Moderna just pull off a giant bait and switch? Company sells stock after market moving rally. Wow, how slick. How slick. In other words, they are profiting off of your ignorance. Whoever bought the breakout should have taken profits. That's all I know. That's all I know. Big tech is turning hospitals into real-time surveillance centers. Recent events have come to light about hospital surveillance that should concern everyone. Big tech is using the pandemic as an excuse to turn hospitals into mirror images of law enforcement's real-time crime centers. When Google announced that they were donating 10,000 Nest cameras to hospitals, my jaw dropped. With these Nest cameras, nurses and doctors will be able to check in on patients, supplementing in-person checks. This means there will be a reduction of physical contact and therefore less of a need for personal protection equipment, PPE, which has fast become a scarce resource. All right, pause. In a way, that can be good and or bad. Now, if they're going to install these Nest cameras alongside the patient's vital signs monitor, then okay, that's good. But if they're going to replace the vital signs monitor with a camera, that right there is absolutely nightmare on Elm Street frightening. So I'm hoping, once again, I do not believe that our trained doctors and nurses are idiots or dumb or incompetent. And I don't think that the hospital administrators are either. Therefore, I'm believing that they're installing the cameras in addition to maintaining the monitoring screens that are up front at the nurses station. So at the nurses station, you have the monitors for every patient, for every room, so they can physically look at and check your vital signs. If anything is out of whack, this loud alarm starts to go off, and they know to go check your room. But adding the visual camera too for seriously ill patients, like patients in the ICU or CCU, I don't have a problem with that. But just cameras in my room in general, I don't like that, because now you're spying on me. And the reason why I say that that's not cool, because some patients, are exposed. They can't really get out of the bed to use the bathroom. So, men have to use the urinal. So that means your nurse is watching you while you do that. That's a little degrading. Plus, if you are in like a semi-private room, you're not in ICU or nothing like that, and let's say you're just in there for some surgery or whatever, you're not there because you have a disease, you're there because you need some kind of surgery, and the person in the bed next to you needs some surgery too. If they got a camera, you know what I'm saying, and they're watching your room, like you're under surveillance, that feels like you're in lockup. That feels like you're in the shoe. You're in isolation. You're being punished. And so they got you on, 24/7 surveillance. And that really messes things up because, what if you're in there for elective surgery and, for you single people out there, there's a little honey next to you in the other bed. She's having some surgery too. And y'all decide, I'm laying here, we bored. Why don't we do something? Guess what? You won't be able to do nothing because they're watching you, unless you're into that kind of thing. So in that regard, thumbs down on the cameras. With the exception, I have no problem with cameras in the ICU/CCU or the NICU. I don't have no problems with those three areas, because we're talking with people, with patients that could be facing life or death. And it'll be good to see something going on before or in lieu of the monitors beeping. See what I'm saying? What if you look and you see somebody seizing up, but the alarms aren't going off yet? The nurse can, bam, code red, code blue, whatever, go handle it. You know what I'm saying? So for critical patients, yeah, ICU, CCU, NICU. That's it. ICU, CCU, NICU. Any other situation, no cameras. I think that is an invasion of one's privacy. All right, moving on. What makes Google's donation so jaw-dropping is how big tech companies are using the pandemic to make them appear magnanimous. With both contact tracing and the Nest Cam solution, however, Google needs to rebuild their reputation as a privacy-concerned company due to the sensitive nature of both projects. It's not going to be an easy task, but one that should remain at the forefront of all such efforts. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. Google is another word. I'm sorry. Actually, no. Google, I think, is Spanish for CIA. So no, that's not going to work. Not going to work. Don't trust them. Let another company do it. Because nothing says reputation builder like putting real-time surveillance cameras in patients' rooms. Not only will hospital record patient, but they will record nurses, doctors, hospital staff, and anyone else who enters a patient's room. That also includes minors. So no one will be safe from Big Brother's prying eyes. You see, that's problematic because you know what they're going to do. They already have this in anyway. They would just upgrade it. I'm almost 100% certain that this comes with it. They already have the mics, where you can, where your nurse can talk to you and say, "Hey, are you okay in there?" "Yeah, I'm good." "Okay, just checking." And you can also call out to them. So this new system, I'm almost 100% certain that these cameras also come mic'd up. So not only can they eavesdrop on your situation when you're in the room and your family is visiting you, but also children. And I thought that there were strict laws about watching children on camera. Doesn't that go into the pornography side of things? Isn't that pedophilia? Because you're watching and recording minors with underdeveloped brains that cannot measure or begin to fathom consequences. We have a problem, folks. We got a problem. We got to deal with that. As The Guardian discovered, it also sends the information to Google servers. So they're recording this information. Okay, let's play devil's advocate just for a moment. Having the real-time cameras recording might be a good thing from a lawsuit perspective, because if everything is being recorded in real time, if a mistake is made, then it would be recorded and captured in real time. All right. So if you're going to put it in patients' rooms, are you going to have the entire hospital mic'd up? Are you going to have are you going to be having cameras everywhere, all over the hospital and in the surgery rooms too, recording everything in surgery? Now, if you're going to take it to that level, then then we can debate and go back and forth, because from a lawsuit perspective, that could save the hospital millions of dollars in lawsuits for malpractice. If everything is being recorded, you can take people back to the tape and say, "See, here it is right here. No, they did not do that to you. They did not hurt you. Nope, that was the right procedure. Nope, that was the right stitch according to the surgeon's glossary index." Something I just made up. But you get what I'm saying. So if you're going to put cameras all over the hospital and mic those cameras up, now I think that's a problem. The only place you need to have that kind of security is in prisons and jails. Other than that, unless you're converting the hospital to a prison or a jail, I don't think we need to have those mic'd up cams, except for in the ICU, CCU, and NICU. All right? Because those are critical patients that could die or could be on the brink of death and fighting for their very lives. So no, no, and no. However, Nest admits that when connected to Google's Works with Net integration system, which allows other devices such as ceiling fans, washing machines, and/or car sensors to integrate with Nest products, it does share personal information with Google. Everyone knows servers can be hacked. Servers can be hacked. Servers can be hacked. Why would Google donate 10,000 Nest cameras to 6,146 hospitals? Because they are hoping that the staff and patients will grow accustomed to being surveilled 24/7, and they hope hospitals will eventually purchase a Nest-aware subscription. See, there we go. Corruption, you guys. That's all it takes, is for corruption to destroy everything. Nest cameras also record audio. Did I not say that? Did I not say that? Before I even got that part to the article, I said it. I said, I guarantee you these cams will be mic'd up. Why would the cams be mic'd up? Because it's part of the beast system that I've been warning you guys about. Cameras come mic'd up now. This is not 1970. This is 2020. All cams come with mics. All the cams in the street will be mic'd up. And we will be recording 24/7 nonstop. And it will be archiving stuff. All right? That's why they're building out these ginormous servers. These ginormous rooms of servers. You know, we're going to have blocks and blocks of servers that's going to record all of this stuff and archive it. So if they have to go back and find something, it's there. But my only problem with this part, though, is, you guys, you know, people get around this, and all they have to do is turn the camera off and say, oops, camera wasn't recording at that moment. Oh, well. Now, if they do this, if they push this forward anyway, which they are, they should add that as a penalty also, and make that in lieu of guilt. In other words, if you are a mic'd up, cammed up entity, right, and your cameras and mics are off for any given length of time, you should be not only fined, but also if there's any impropriety or criminal thing that happens, you should be 100% held liable for that as well. So there has to be some type of backstop measure so that when a camera is not working, an alarm goes off. If the sound is not working with the camera, an alarm should go off so you can fix and get with that immediately. And it should also be recorded that and how long the camera was off, and you know, if anyone was taking action to fix it. It should all be a recorded module so that in those events, those events are documented. Camera outages and mic out outages should be documented. And if any impropriety or crimes are committed doing that part, if it's done by if a staff member is involved, then it should be automatic guilty. Automatic, 100% guilt on the and I mean criminal guilt, meaning that someone should be locked up. So case in point, like when Epstein was, they said, oh, he hung himself in his thing. Oh, but there's no camera footage. Just take our word for it. Nope. Whoever was in charge of him that day should be held accountable and locked up for murder. So should the supervisor for failing to supervise. They should be locked up for murder. And then, of course, also the head of the institution also should be brought up on charges as well. All the people involved during that situation should be on trial right now and should be found guilty. You probably won't be able to hit them with murder, but you can hit them with negligent homicide because this person died on your watch and your cameras were not working, and we have no record, we have no documentation of the exact time the cameras went off and exact time of when it went back on and what course of action was taken during that time. There was no recording of this. There was no documentation that you were having a malfunction of your camera because you didn't follow the protocol for camera outage. There should be protocols for camera outage. Okay? So there should be rules. Seriously, like if a crime happens and your camera, it happens on your property and your camera is not working and recording like it's supposed to, a log record needs to be made of the time that it went out and what time it came back on and what actions were taken throughout that. There should be like a literal dossier at the person who runs the cameras, whatever company that is, and the institution that uses the cameras. And there should be straight up written protocol. Because if anything goes down while your cameras are out, both parties should be held criminally liable. Criminally liable. If we do that, now I would start being, you know what, America is getting this act together. You know, that's what's up. That's what's up. That is what's up. They're taking responsibility and some accountability. I like that. So if we're going to bring out these cameras all mic'd up, we need to bring out the rules, regulations for outages. No one should be able to just turn our camera off, you know, so that they can commit a crime or do something crazy. Nope. And there should also be laws and a protocol in place for lost footage or deleted footage. Before you can delete footage, there has to be protocols done and sign-offs by supervisory managers, whatever. And then they, too, have to be held criminally liable if that information is destroyed. Straight up. That's right. And it should go for the police, too. Anyone who's using real-time surveillance and backing it up at government buildings, government institutions, hospitals, things like that, there should be a protocol in place for camera outages, and also if someone in authority deems they need to turn off a camera because of some emergency, it should be documented, and that person is to accept criminal liability if a crime is committed or someone is murdered or something like that on their watch because that camera was out where it happened at. See what I'm saying? If we get protocols in place like that, since we're going to be a surveillance society, I would say, all right, I don't have no problem with it, because if any impropriety takes place, it's being recorded. No problem. If that's where we're going, okay, put these rules in place and make it so that no one can opt out. So that takes us to the next part of the protocol. If we're going to be a surveillance society, you're going to put cameras, mic'd up cameras everywhere, then we need to have them also in the halls of Congress. We need to have them in the halls of Congress. And no backdoor meeting should ever be allowed, because it is not an issue of national security. It is not something that is classified, as according to the State Department and the Department of Defense. Unless that particular meeting has been deemed classified due to national security for real and signed off by a higher up who takes responsibility for everything that happens in the meeting and as a result outside of the meeting, then we can say, okay, no problem. But all things should be recorded and mic'd up. That means mic'd up halls of Congress. Everything being recorded, even in the governor's office, everywhere, every place, the courthouses, Supreme Court, everywhere. No one can opt out. Everything you do, Mr. Supreme Court Judge, is also being recorded and mic'd up. If we're going to play fair, if we're going to mic the world up, then we got to do it right and we got to do it fair, and no one can opt out. And there has to be rules, ramifications, and repercussions if the mic is turned off, or the monitor is turned off, or not working properly, or not recording. Heads should fly, because you made it so that the camera did not record or whatever. So we have to assume you're in on it. Feel me? I'm dead serious. If we're going to do that, then that's what we got to do. We got to make it for everyone. No one is exempt. And since you're taking it there, and because everything is, considered a matter of public record, then every time a CEO is in his office conducting meetings, it should also be recorded, and it should also be mic'd up, so that you ain't got to worry about insider selling and all that, insider trading, right? If you're going to put these rules in place, they have to be equal for every citizen, even including the President of the United States. If what's going on is not classified under the Secrecy Act or the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, if he's just talking about fried chicken, record that joint and have it mic'd up. Straight up. Since no one's going to since privacy is a thing of the past and everybody's mic'd up, you got to do it liberally. All right? That's how it has to be. Sorry. It is what it is. If you expect every citizen to live under 1984 Ray Bradbury's Fahrenheit 451, then you need to live under it too. Lead by example. Sir, madam, lead by example. Then we'll be all right. So these cameras also record audio, making them the perfect hospital surveillance tool for law enforcement. Although a Google search of total hospital police departments in the U.S. turned up nothing. We know that there are more than 6,000 hospitals and there are more than 17,000 law enforcement agencies in the U.S. And with that being said, every police officer, every beat cop should have that that mic, that camera recording with audio at all times, and they should also be held accountable if that thing is not working. And there should be a feedback loop over at the home office that is notified if the officer's cam is cut off and or no longer recording. And it should be made known to him too. He should be notified. Hey, yo, just in case you didn't know, your cam ain't working. It's dysfunctioning. We're trying to fix it. If we can't get it fixed within the next couple of minutes, we're going to need you to come back in and get another one, get a new one. See what I'm saying? And not just because you're policing society, but you're also protecting that officer. You dig what I'm saying? This is also for his protection. So if law enforcement is going to be, held accountable and have to do their jobs, then they should have the body cams too, recording sound and video. All right? So I'm just saying, if we're going to do it, then let's do it right. So if we were to make a conservative guess and say that at least half of Americans' hospitals have police departments, that puts the number at roughly 3,075. Does anyone really think that 3,075 hospital police departments will return Google's Nest cameras after the pandemic? A recent Wall Street Journal article warned that hospitals are also using thermal imaging to scan everyone entering the hospital. The Wall Street Journal reported that hospitals are using thermal imaging to scan everyone entering the hospital. Did you all know about that? I didn't know about that. That's a whole nother bag of worms right there. Wow. Unbelievable. It is reprehensible to see how the mass media portrays big tech in such a positive light as they slowly turn our hospitals into real-time surveillance centers. A recent news release by care.ai revealed that the largest hospital association in the country, the Texas Hospital Association, THA, is using artificial intelligence to monitor patients in real time. Through this new partnership with care.ai, Texas hospitals will have the opportunity to experience the use of AI in a hands-on local lab environment. They will get to see in real time the value that autonomous monitoring can bring to their facilities. We're proud to connect our members to cutting-edge technologies that have a transformative impact on healthcare delivery in Texas. Fernando Martinez, PhD, President and CEO of the Texas Hospital Association Foundation, said. Today, THA is one of the largest, most respected healthcare associations in the country, and the only association that represents the entire Texas hospital industry. The Texas Hospital Association serves as the political and educational advocate for more than 430 hospitals and health systems statewide. If the most respected healthcare association in the country thinks it is okay to use AI to monitor patients in real time, then America's hospitals have truly become real-time surveillance centers. Care AI's business model is not built on helping patients recover from the coronavirus. It is built on monitoring patients in real time. Continuous monitoring that can locate and identify individuals and their behaviors in real time, minimizing risk before they happen. That has nothing to do with treatment. That has nothing to do with medicine, people. That has no business being in a hospital, except for, like I said, the urgent care. Someone who is in the ICU, CCU, and NICU. I have no problem with cameras with audio in those very delicate situations. Until you've had a loved one in ICU fighting for their life, or CCU or NICU, who didn't leave the hospital, you can't really appreciate that. But I wouldn't have a problem with that, because then I know that someone is watching my loved ones in real time, and they're not going to miss a beat. The nurse ain't sleep somewhere in a room. You feel me? According to Care AI, they are continuously monitoring everyone in every Texas hospital room. Care AI calls it the self-aware room. I call it the real-time surveillance room. Care AI has taken smart devices and perverted them into 3 real-time surveillance devices: the AMS-M1, the AMS-M2, and the AMS-M2R. Smart devices are packed with cameras and deep learning sensors. Question: if Google is donating 10,000 Nest cameras and Care AI is using multiple smart devices equipped with cameras, at what point do we ask how many surveillance devices are too many? There is no word if Google plans to donate Nest Hubs Maxes to hospitals, but if they do, they would turn America's hospitals into real-time facial recognition centers. Do we really want to live in a future where hospitals mirror police department real-time crime centers? Once hospitals acquire surveillance technology, mission creep dictates that it will grow and grow until there is no turning back. But here's something that the article did not address. I don't see how using artificial intelligence as far as facial recognition software is going to even help them. Because remember, it's you guys, it's you authorities that told us to do this. You authorities told us that it wasn't safe to go outside without a mask. So if everyone's going to be walking around wearing a mask now, how is your facial recognition software going to work if you can't recognize people's faces because they masked up like they're about to hit a lick? If everybody's masked up like they're about to hit a lick, what purpose is your facial recognition software going to be? What purpose will it serve? It's going to be absolutely 100% ineffective and a waste of money. So basically, you're being pimped. They're going to get you to buy all these technologies for facial recognition, but then guess what? It's not going to work. So here they just made billions of dollars off of all the idiots buying the equipment. That's not going to work for them. Very, 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 very interesting. Ain't that something? So you gotta think your way through things. You gotta do the knowledge to stuff. You know? You gotta really break it down. You gotta really think your way through these issues of the day so that you don't get caught out there. You know, you don't want to get caught out there looking whack, looking stupido. All right? Think your way through the issues, ladies and gentlemen, and ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions. Just make sure you're asking the right questions. And if you don't know enough to know that you don't know that you're not asking the right questions, then find a source that can give you the information that you need. All right. That's all we got for today, ladies and gentlemen. It has been my pleasure to bring to you these well-informed opinions of mine. Thank you for sticking with me. And I ask right now that you guys will hit that like button and that you would handle your business and go over to PulseWaveTrading.com. We got some free giveaways for you. And we also still got that 6-pack going. You know you're thirsty. I'm parched. I've been talking for quite a while. And so I'm going to go get myself a refreshment. You need to get one too at PulseWaveTrading.com. And remember, bulls make money, bears make money, and pigs get slaughtered. So remember to take what you can and give nothing back. And I'm out. Peace.